Spooky countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to Makers.dev episode number 76. Chris, we just went through this, but hello.
Hello.
What you up to?
Hi. Yeah, something is either wrong with our internet or the website we're using to record this, but hopefully this is coming to your ears now. Wait,
Yes.
I'm doing fine.
Good.
I have a sick kid at home, but I'm doing fine. How about you?
I'm sorry you have a sick kid at home. I am a little all over the place. I think part of the error might be that I have changed location. If you're watching this on video, you'll notice I'm in a bedroom and I'm no longer in the room that I was in before. And this setup I got, I just threw together like as we were doing palms this morning. Every break, I was like, all right, I didn't have my extra monitor, so this palm. Let me get my extra monitor. Oh my gosh, I have two screens now. I can get so much more work done. Oh, and let me get my little laptop stand. I got that. Let me find my headphones. I found my headphones. So this is like every area of my life right now. Yesterday I was trying to find a shirt, and it took me 25 minutes to find where my clothes were. And I hate living like this, but it's temporary, and it's gonna be okay. Yeah, that's and then things like this of the internet. I haven't tested it from this location before, and so it's probably a Wi-Fi signal issue, but yeah, it's gonna be okay. What did you get into this last week?
Most of what I have done, I've had to prepare for a few different things. So what I wanted to talk about today is that I am sort of preparing for doing a course, an AI for JavaScript developers course. So I'm making this. It's going to be a video course, and I'm still trying to figure out exactly what that means. But AI for JavaScript developers sounded like a cool thing to teach, and so that's what I'm doing. That's what I spent all morning doing. That's what I'm sort of planning and prepping for.
I love this, and I would love to dig into it because the book that you recommended, which is something like TensorFlow JS for Dummies or something.
Learning TensorFlow JS by O'Reilly.
Yes, that one. Fantastic book. Really opened my eyes to being able to have a map of like, okay, these are problems that AI is good for, and this is a little bit more information than I would need of like how I would train neural nets, and I don't really need to do that. But now when I'm in a situation like someone pitching to me, hey, would it be possible to have a automatic video editor with FFmpeg that could automatically follow a person's face as they're moving within their frame? I can now contextualize like, well, I know that taking a frame of a video as a picture and asking an ML model to find me the face and draw a box around it, I know that that is a solved problem. I know that that is like a trivial thing to do in ML. So I can take that puzzle piece and slot it together with, well, in FFmpeg, I have my own domain expertise in how I can crop videos like that and go frame by frame to be able to crop it. So my answer is yes, that is something that's currently technically possible. Whereas something like, can you follow around a dog's face in this video? That would be a little trickier. And I would need to probably ask you like, hey, can I train a custom machine learning model to follow a dog's face instead of a human's face? Or is there something like that that exists already? So like I feel like you're making this for me. I don't know if I'm your target audience. I think you mentioned before that you're building this for teams, but I'm very excited for this course. And even if it's just like, if you just read to me the book and went through and like showed me the examples, I think when I was going through the book, I thought about doing something similar of just like I'm going through it as a student. That would be value add in itself. So adding to that your domain expertise of almost being a grandmaster in Kaggle and having your own fancy, very expensive graphics card. Like this is a course that I'd love to see. How are you thinking about it? What are the challenges you're currently facing? What does that timeline look like?
Yeah, so timeline, I have no idea. But for challenges, so you brought up a good point, which is, so this Learning TensorFlow JS book is a great book. There are even a couple of like courses on Udemy and a couple other things like video courses, which basically cover TensorFlow JS. But when I started thinking about it, and that's kind of where I thought I was going first, was like all JavaScript and just TensorFlow JS. The problem is that's like almost no one does that in production, like full stack JavaScript AI. What TensorFlow JS is really good for is for you can run it in a web browser, in React Native, or in Node. And if you want to use a pre-built model, like you said, there's a face following model, for example, then it's great for that. Like you just load up the pre-built model and you can run it anywhere JavaScript runs, and it's great. As soon as you want to do, so the example that I gave you was the dog following one. So say instead of following human faces, you want to follow dog faces. Now suddenly you have to train a custom model. You can use one of these backbone models as sort of like you can just fine tune one probably. Like it's like a starting with a human face following model is probably a pretty good starting point for a dog face following model, but then you need to train it on a bunch of dog faces. And to do that, the best way to do it is to do it in Python and then port it back over to TensorFlow.js, which is sort of unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. And so what I've been struggling with this morning is like, how do I, like, what is the course? Like, is it all JavaScript? Is it all JavaScript and I sort of, tell you, what you can do and then say, but if you wanted to do a dog following one, like you could do it in JavaScript, but really the best way is to do it this way in Python and then not explain the Python part? Or do I have like a whole second half of the course, which is like, okay, everything you can do in TensorFlow.js. Now here's how you do it in Python and port it back to TensorFlow. So that's sort of what I'm trying to figure out is, do I just do all JavaScript and say, here are the limitations? Or do I then say, and here's how you solve them. You learn some Python, do it in Python and port it back. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
This to me is just sort of a core question of like, who is your audience and what is the problem that you're trying to solve for them? Is this for people like me who are just sort of playing around with this and want to know what the potential is? Is this for companies who the boss is like, machine learning, we gotta say that we do something in AI so that our investors give us more money, and they just need something to patch in there? Is this for a developer to improve their skills so that now they can come to the table in meetings and be like, well, I know what's possible now in AI and ML, so I can help you identify, right now we have humans following dog faces by hand. Maybe we shouldn't do that. And it's not something off the shelf, but we could invest this money in this project and be able to do it. Who is the person who you're making this course for, as clearly as you've defined that so far?
Good question. I don't know 100% yet, so what I do know is there's some great resources at the free or low cost. So like the book was like what, 20 or 30 bucks or something. And by reading that book, you can sort of get a feel for what's possible in JavaScript. So I don't think like, say I want my course to be, $100 to $300, something in that range, like at different tiers or whatever, then I have to go, I have to actually solve real world problems, like probably for teams. So that's where that team part comes into play. So yeah, like I'm a boss and I have a bunch of data and like we need to do machine learning. Here, person, JavaScript, now do some machine learning. So I probably have to solve that problem pretty well. So that's sort of how I'm thinking about it now. But I also know that there are a lot of people who are just like, I know JavaScript. I think AI is cool. And I would spend some money to know how to do cool stuff, with AI. And so, and there's even more I can talk about it if you want. I outlined like 10 different types of people who might want to do it and what they might want to solve and all this stuff. And I don't know. So it's going to be more work on my part to figure out what type of course I want to build. What I don't want to do is say this is for everybody, because that would turn into a garbage course, I think. Yep. Like I want to pick the top, maybe 2 or 3 real use cases and personas and then do it for those people.
Yeah. This is back to our thing about naming things. If you don't have boundaries, eventually the course will include things like how to file your taxes and like that's right. Doesn't make sense. Cool. I'm really curious in this for me. Like I had a real world use case that made me a lot of money of like, because I knew about how to identify faces in a frame of a photo, I was able to pick up this consulting job and make several $1,000s, and that was really cool. I love the example of the dog faces. Can you paint me a picture of like, well, what am I trying to say? That course would have been worth it to me if you had merely read the book to me, the TensorFlow.js book, because like the information that I got from that book would have been easier for me to consume if it was a video course. And then I had a very clear ROI of like, because I had read this book, I was able to get this $7,000 contracting gig. And so if that was a $300 video course, that was easier for me to consume. Like, yes, of course, the ROI is there. am I one of your target audience personas? Uh, and if so, can you make a pitch to me of why I would need to go down into that Python level? Maybe another example, like the dog example of like in what are you doing for me that's more than what the book did? Given that like even if you just recorded a video course of the book, that would be worth $300 to me.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so the biggest pitch for Python is that 98% of all AI is written in Python or something. And so if you want to use anything that anyone else has already written, then you sort of have to know at least enough Python to then get it into JavaScript. As an example, there are new, like, say, language models, and there's new language models that come out like every week. There seems to be another state-of-the-art one. If you want to use state-of-the-art stuff, you either have to wait until someone ports it to, TensorFlow JS and puts it in the model zoo and gives you, a nice tutorial, or you have to learn enough Python to be able to do that yourself, which is not that hard. But if you want to have the best performance, then you have to be able to do that. So yeah, if you want to like use one of these state-of-the-art language models, then you have to know how to do enough Python to do that. So that's the big pitch for it. Also, if you switch to Python, then you can use Google Colab for free to train on a GPU. You can't do that with JavaScript. And so if you want to use image or text data, like lots of it, then you either need your own GPU or you have to use Python. Or, I mean, you can rent one too, but they get expensive.
Okay. The TensorFlow JS, I've forgotten the title again. TensorFlow JS for Dummies.
Learning TensorFlow JS.
Learning TensorFlow JS, thank you. That book, if I remember correctly, went through some of those things. It went through like, here's how you take a Python model, recognizing that the Python PyTorch library and models are a much bigger ecosystem. Here's how you take that and transition it to JavaScript. And here's how you train your own model in JavaScript. Where are they lacking?
Yeah, so what it did, so I have it here, and what they tell you is how to take a TensorFlow Keras model and load that in TensorFlow JS. And the thing is, you can just load those. And so if the model is written in a specific way, which is a TensorFlow Keras model, then you can just load that in TensorFlow JS, which is really cool. But if it's a PyTorch saved, like a saved PyTorch model, which 70% or something of all models are saved PyTorch models, not TensorFlow Keras models, then you can't do that.
Okay.
You have to convert it. There's a couple different ways to convert it. And you don't even need TensorFlow JS. Actually, one of the ways is to use something called Onyx, ONNX, which is like sort of a way that you can save models it's like an interoperable like model format. So you don't even need TensorFlow JS. You can just save your model as an Onyx file, and then you can load it in Onyx JS.
That's really cool.
JS.
Okay.
Right. So yeah, and so there's lots of different things that I think you should know that are outside of the scope of just TensorFlow JavaScript.
Cool. Okay. Zooming out a little bit, like I love that you're doing this. Especially having the framing of that, like you're pulling it back to be able to run in a JavaScript runtime. I think that's a clear choice. Like, I don't think this is a course for people trying to make their own self-driving cars where you can have your own hardware and like optimize it, and you really need it to run as fast as possible, and so you're going to use Python or something like. So to have the framing of whatever you're doing, whatever the model is, it's eventually going to want to run somewhere that runs JavaScript, I think is a really good framing. That's and then there's a lot of web developers, and a lot of developers know web development, so pulling it back to this familiar place of JavaScript land, I think, is a good framing. And then if you can take me just a little step further than this book takes, or even if you just like say what the book says, but that trick of Onyx is really cool, that I can take all of the existing PyTorch libraries and run into JavaScript. I didn't know I could do that. That now unlocks for me this huge library of like, man, I'm not even from I don't know if I had to develop an app that like could listen to a bird song and identify the bird song and songs, or I don't know. Presumably there are much more useful models in the PyTorch land. Is there a term for that, like a library or like a node modules, but for PyTorch?
So no, which is they're it's like in a bunch of different GitHub repos and all this stuff. The closest that you get to is something called Hugging Face.
Okay.
Hugging Face, which is the Hugging Face emoji is their logo, and it's a company. They just raised a whole bunch of money, and they've existed for a long time, but they are focused on language, and so they have like a repository basically of all the language models, and state-of-the-art language models get on there in like a day or two.
Okay.
And so so like part of this book, or this course I mean, was basically going to be like, go to Hugging Face, find a model that you like, and then run this script which downloads it from Hugging Face. This is all in Python, by the way. Downloads it from Hugging Face, converts it into the format you need, and then saves it so that you can use it in JavaScript.
Cool.
So that'd be part of it. There is something called TIMM for image models, but like it's just basically a list of models and links to the models. And the models are all hosted on like GitHub or other file hosting places.
That appeals to me a lot, that you can point me to these huge repositories on Tim and Hugging Face. What a funny...
Yeah.
There's like hundreds of millions of dollars. This is just the tech world that we're living in.
It is. It's like $1 billion company.
Amazing.
It's called Hugging
Ridiculous.
Face. Yeah, it's awesome.
So I didn't know either of those existed. I think I've heard of the term Hugging Face before, but like the idea that I could just go there and peruse through and see what's possible and see what the existing models are. And then you can show me, here's how you pull these things into a JavaScript runtime to be able to integrate them into your app. And then, you as the developer just connecting tubes. And then if you needed to go a layer further, if you needed to recognize dog faces instead of human faces, here's how you would do it. That's really cool. That like doing nothing else, I feel like that's justifying the $200, $300 price point.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's where I ended up thinking about it all this morning is, at first I thought I was going to have to do a significant chunk in Python, and now I'm leaning towards, just teaching enough Python and enough Python about the Python libraries so that you can basically get the model and then bring it back over to JavaScript.
Yeah, I like that. And I think you could just keep it self-contained at that, and then like maybe just show me what would be involved if I was needing to train my own model.
Yeah, and like this is the thing, like you can train the models in JavaScript. You can do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just harder. The support's not as good. It's just a better experience to do it in Python because all the libraries are there. But you can do it in JavaScript. Mm-hmm. So I'll probably say something like that. And also like you can still learn all the concepts in JavaScript. So the reason I like AI for JavaScript developers as a concept is like learning AI is hard enough by itself. Mm-hmm. Learning Python plus AI together is confusing. It's like when I learned Rails, I learned Ruby and Rails together. Yeah. Or when people learn React, they learn JavaScript and React together sometimes. Yeah. It's just confusing. So if I could teach you all the basic concepts in JavaScript, and then be like, it's 10 times easier in Python, you should learn some Python too. Yeah. I think that's where I ended up.
Okay. I like that. It's what I'm hearing is that like there's learning Python would unlock a lot more stuff to be able to do, like being able to train your own models on a GPU. And that's like the way that everyone's training their models on Kaggle and stuff.
And it's like you can do it in JavaScript. It's just there's way fewer tutorials. It's a lot harder. There's much less options.
Right. I think the core question of this course right now for me is, can you justify $300 of value just in JavaScript, or to get to that price point, do you need to also teach me Python to unlock more of those things?
Yeah, that's good. For some people, you could totally justify $300 and more dollars because there are some things you can only do in JavaScript, which is like run in the web browser, right? So like you want to do face tracking in the web browser, yes, you can do that in JavaScript. You have to use JavaScript, and there's a model for it, and you made a lot of money consulting for it, and so yes. So obviously, the question is sort of like how many people actually does that apply to? So I'm going to spend a bunch of time on this. Is it going to be worth all my time? Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I'm excited for it. I'm going to be the first person to sign up for your course.
All right.
Cool. How are Kaggle competitions going?
Yeah. Oh, I think I said, yeah. So there's one that's going really well. I'm doing like 5 right now, which is way too many. I I can do maybe 2, really 1. Like if I focus on 1 at a time, that's really good.
Okay, you're doing 5.
But there are several. I'm doing 1 really well, 1 okay, and 3 very poorly right now.
Okay.
But I like them all. Actually, the one that I'm doing the best in is probably the one I'm least interested in, but that's a different problem. But I'm on a team in that one, so like I feel compelled to help my team and everything. So there's that dynamic as well. But yeah, so I don't know. It's just like taking on too many things, and that extends to Kaggle as well for me.
I feel that. Yes, it's my core problem as a person, which I'll get into later in my update. Does this need to change? I know a goal of yours has been to get Grandmaster status in Kaggle. I think you needed 2 more golds to be able to get that.
I need 3 more. I very much hope that the one I'm doing the best in right now will be a gold. We're still in the gold range right now, with like just a couple weeks left. So yeah, after that I'll need 2 more. But
and all of them can be on a team.
Yeah.
Okay, because you already have your solo gold.
I already have my solo gold.
Okay. I'm not sure what your priorities are in doing this. Kaggle competitions are just fun, and like it might, you're learning a lot about AI by jumping between them. There's nothing like inherently bad to me that you're doing 5 at a time, and you have one that seems like it's in the bag that's on a team.
Well, it's this is something that, so if you do much Kaggle, you'll learn. We are currently doing very well. However, that's on the public leaderboard. On the private leaderboard, we may be doing terribly.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's the worst feeling when you're like, all right, I'm doing really well.
Yeah.
And then you drop like 20 places, or some people drop like 1,000 places.
Oof.
When the private leaderboard comes out. Yeah, you can do that for sure. We don't think that that's the case. Like there are sometimes signals that it's called a shake up, right? When you shake up or down, and there are like sometimes you can know that there's going to be a lot of shake up. This one doesn't seem to trend that way, but we'll see. Yeah.
Okay. This is the GPS competition.
No, this is the patent one.
The
GPS one. Yeah. The GPS one is that's the one I'm doing solo so far. And that one, I feel okay about that one because that one ends like a month after this patent one ends, and so I'll have at least a month of like dedicated time. That even if I focus solely on the patent one right now, the GPS one I expect to do pretty well also, just because I did pretty well last year, and I feel like I have a leg up on other people because like even just reusing exactly what I did last year would probably get me at least silver. So
okay,
yeah.
Do you want to change how you're doing this? Do you want to be focusing? An obvious way to focus, from what you just said, seems like just only focus on the one that has the closest deadline.
Yeah. I mean, well, so yeah, I don't know if I need to change because you're right. Like it's all fun. Like I'm not, it's not my job or anything. And so focusing on the closest deadline is good, except if you always do that, you'll always only have like, a month or even a few weeks for a competition.
Yeah.
And the real way to get really good is to spend like 2 or 3 months. Like 3 months is the maximum amount of time. Like that's how long the competitions are.
Okay.
So if you spend all 3 months on a competition, that's when you do really, really well. I get, top 5 kind of places. Okay. So I don't know. If I want to do really well, I should focus on 1 at a time for 2 to 3 months. Yeah. So.
Okay. Well,
I don't know.
You need 2 more gold. I think it's like an objective goal that you have. Seems like as long as there's not a huge shakeup, you probably have one of those.
So I need 3 more.
You need 3 more. Yeah. So you probably have this one more.
I probably have
the
one.
Patent one. Yeah. And then you'll need 2 more. Of the other 4 competitions that you're in, are there 2 that stand out as like the most probable that if you really worked on it and focused on it that you would get 2 more gold?
The GPS one.
GPS, of course, yeah.
And then after that is actually one I'm not doing right now, but I think I could do pretty well in.
So we're going to do another one.
Probably.
Okay.
Because the other ones I don't think I can get gold into the other ones I'm in. So
okay.
Yeah.
I think like the entrepreneur answer to this is like brutally cut away anything that's a distraction. So
yeah.
Other than the patent one, the GPS one, and the new one that you have a high probability of getting gold in, stop working on all the other ones. If your goal is to become a grandmaster as quickly as possible, but like, I don't know that that's your goal. Maybe your goal is just to have fun and learn different techniques and do some things that are like audio based and get more of a broad scope of things for the course.
Yeah, I think that's my goal. I just have such a drive, like in other things as well, that it feels bad to be like, I'm okay getting, like this last one, the one just finished, the bird one finished, and I got like 300th place, and I'm
Yeah.
like, am I okay with that? I learned a lot about audio, and
Yeah.
I didn't spend very much time on it, and that's why I got 300th place.
Yeah.
Like, I guess I'm okay with that. I don't know, because I did learn a lot. So,
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
yeah,
It's like, is the problem here just that you're judging yourself for not getting first place and everything?
I think so.
Okay, yeah, dude,
Yeah.
it's fine. You're having
Yeah.
fun. You're learning new things about AI. You can recognize snippets of birds in an audiogram file, histogram, whatever that graph was called.
Spectrogram. Yeah.
Spectrogram. Yeah, it's amazing. You're a wizard. You're able to teach a computer how to think and recognize patterns, and I think that's really cool.
Cool. All right.
Cool.
I'll take the optimism.
Great. And like, if you just keep doing what you're doing, you're gonna get grandmaster. Like this.
Oh yeah, I'll get. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I will.
Yeah. And it's not a race. Like, you're not trying to get grandmaster so that you can get a job or something.
Right.
Yeah. No. Okay. Yeah. Just keep doing your 5 different things, and it's fine.
Cool. All right.
Cool. I have 3 things that I would like to talk about.
All right.
First 2 are personal, and the last one is more professional, but also kind of personal. The first thing is I got engaged. I got engaged
All right.
yesterday on Labor Day. It was
Congratulations.
very romantic. Sarah and I went to the spot on White Rock Lake, a beautiful lake near us, where we had our first kiss. And on the date where we had our first kiss, we got Thai food. So we got Thai food again. I think I ordered the same thing, the duck curry. It was very good. And Sarah set up this cool little tent, and we had a bunch of photos in it from moments in our relationship, and like cool little lights, and it was facing the lake in this cool little alcove, and it was great. And then I gave her a ring that I made myself, and
That is
I was
awesome.
so proud of myself. It did not go. I had an image for what I wanted it to be, and
Yeah.
it did not fit that image, but I ran with it. But I'd like to talk about that process a little bit, because I try to look through everything through the lens of like SaaS and like optimization and stuff. And it was really cool that like this was a brand new skill that I have always wanted to learn how to do, and now I have this great opportunity to learn how to do lost wax casting, and so I do it. And looking back, I way overinvested in the stage of this process that was the design and the like 3D work. I made like a mathematically perfect model of a ring, and then I gave myself like 2 days to go from I have the printed model of it. And the resin 3D printing stuff also, like I really nailed that part of the process down. And then I gave myself 2 days to be able to go from that castable resin model of my perfect ring to have it be in metal. And that was not enough time. That was not very good time allocation on my part. And it ended up that like all these little stupid details I was worried about of like, ooh, I want to make sure this is like accurate to the micron of like exactly this thing, does not matter at all if like the later stage isn't like when I casted it. I think the problem I had was, so once you have the wax version of the ring and you put plaster in it, you have to vacuum up all of the air bubbles out, and that part didn't work. I didn't get all the air bubbles out. And then you need to bake that in an oven so that all the wax evaporates, and all the wax did not evaporate. So what happens then is you get these little occlusions and like imperfections of like once you pour the metal in, it's not filling in places that it should be filling in because there's wax residue still there. So it came out lovable, but as imperfect as I am, and Sarah is in our relationship. So that's the spin I'm putting on this. And once I polished it, looked really good. And like, it's, I feel like if you showed someone this ring and you were like, can you believe Christian made this all by himself in a microwave? I feel like they would say, yes, I can believe that. But like, it is identifiably a engagement ring, and there's a moissanite half carat stone set in it. I wanted it to be 1 carat, but the prongs didn't fully form, and so there just wasn't enough room. So I used my backup stone that I got, and I think my lesson from that is like, I have improved so much in my life in terms of project management, of being able to work on something like a Kaggle competition, not right up to the deadline, but stretch it out and be able to prepare for it and spend a month or two working on this thing. And I still have ways to improve that. Of like, I think if I had taken 10 minutes and just done like a project outline of like, okay, there's these 6 different unknown processes in this ring making process, and I want to have it done here. So let's start by going back a week, and I'll have a week of buffer time, and then let's take the 5 different processes and roughly split up like, okay, I have a fifth of my remaining time for each of these unknown processes. I think the end result would have been much better, because I would have given myself much more time to figure out like, why is the wax not evaporating fully, and maybe I need to get a proper burnout oven instead of a microwave for this particular step, and so that'll fully burn off. And I think then the end result would have been much I don't want to use the word better. It would have been closer to my image
idea.
Yeah. So, but like overall, man, this was such a fun process, and I love just picking up a brand new skill. And I know how to make rings now. Like I can make little things out of metal from a design in my head. I can 3D model it and print off a resin thing, and then in several different metals, like in copper and silver and brass and gold, I'm able to take that abstract image of a thing and cast it in metal, and I think that's really cool. Any thoughts on getting engaged or the process of making a ring?
Yeah, several thoughts. The first is like, what do I want to say first? The first is I'm reminded of the story, which probably isn't true, but that is often repeated, about the pottery class, which is, you're in a pottery class, and half the room is graded on the perfect, like one pot, the perfect pot, and the other half of the room is graded on how many pots they make in a semester. And the ones who make or are graded on as many pots as they could make actually ended up making better pots because they did 100 of them, and the ones who were graded on the single best pot, they were trying to get the perfect pot from the beginning and ended up not doing as well.
Yes.
So what so on one side you should have made 100 pots and maybe that the final result would have been better. But I would say that, every time she looks down and see this ring with the imperfections and stuff, she will say, "Oh my goodness, Christian loved me enough to make a ring."
Yes.
And, that is now part of the story of the ring. It's not like the purpose of an engagement ring is not to be perfect. It is to get engaged.
Yes.
And that's what you did.
Success.
So success. Yes. Exactly. So I think that's great. And you learned a new skill. And it's also like, it is so very you to want to make a ring enough that you make it for like, so no, I think that, that's, she knows what she's getting into,
Yeah. Cool. I love the reference to the parable of the pottery class. And actually I had that thought while I was trying to fix printer errors in the earlier stages, because I was getting all these errors in printing it, of like pieces of it would be missing just like in the resin, and I was getting really frustrated and feeling like, it has to be perfect. And I remembered, wait, parable of the pottery class, what if I just try to print 40 of them? And so with that mentality, I started to think much more like, oh, well, I really just need to improve the system of being able to do a print. I need that to be easier. Okay, how could that be easier? Well, if I had a bigger trash receptacle for this stuff, that, because that takes a lot of time right now. I'm trying to cram it all in this little jar, and if I had a bigger one, that would, okay, let's do that. Now that reduced the cost of it. Well, if I had my alcohol in a spray bottle instead of in the bottle, that would make it faster. Oh yeah, cool. If I had a tissue box instead of paper towels, that would make it faster. And then by doing that, I was able to do many more iterations and then figure out, I need my printer tuned for the settings of this resin. I didn't know that was a thing that you needed to do in resin printing, but that makes perfect sense. That's sort of a thing that you need to do in standard 3D printing. So cool. And I was looking at all the toxic trash that I made after this, and saw like roughly 30 different rings that I'd printed in different stages of perfection, and like that part of the process I feel like I did really well. In embodying this mentality of like just the iterations matter much more than getting the perfect thing. But then I just ran out of time at the end to be able to, like, if I had done that with casting it in metal, I feel like I could have gotten something really good. And I intend to, like, we still have the wedding rings to cast, and those are going to be great. Gosh darn it. Because I'm going to make 30 of them in brass, and then and brass is a much cheaper metal to work with, and then in the process of doing that, I'm gonna like iterate and see like, okay, well, what's the slow part of the system, and how can I improve the process of making this, as opposed to trying to get a perfect end result. And yeah, I think that will make a much better end result. And then yeah, I'll have a great superpower of being able to make a really good thing out of like the whole system now will be ironed out, that I've done every stage of it 100 times. Yeah. So the entire complicated pipeline will have the same level of perfection as currently the going from the design to the wax print does. So I'm looking forward to that.
Cool. Since we're just talking about Kaggle competitions too, this is actually exactly how you should approach Kaggle competitions. One thing that people, especially newcomers, see is the teams that win often have very complicated models that are like ensembles, so like averages on top of averages, lots of different models and very complicated, and they do all these pre-processing and post-processing steps and stuff. And a common failure mode is for newcomers to try to do all that from the beginning. Like try to have multiple models and pre-processing, post-processing, and all this stuff. When really, what the way those teams evolved was, and the best way to do it is to start with the simplest thing that you could possibly think to work and get that working. Okay, now add a little bit more and get that working. Okay, and then so iterate from there. And so that's sort of like the build 100 pots thing. It's like you build 100 different models, not all at once, but you kind of do it in an iterative fashion. Then you can really see what works and what doesn't. And by the end, you have this really complicated ensemble of models, but it was built up slowly over time instead of all at once. So you kind of try to do you did the first part the right way, but then the second part you sort of did all at once. But
yes.
Yeah, now you know for next time. Yeah.
You know what I'm reminded of too is the method of reading a book in the book How to Read a Book. I just said the word a lot, but it's in the model of how to read a book from the book How to Read a Book is to go through the entire book at increasingly more verbose levels of resolution. So the very first time you read the book, you read like the cover and the table of contents, and that's your first pass. You've now read the book, and then you go one level deeper. You read like the chapter headings and you skim through, and if there's any interesting diagrams or things in bold, you kind of stop and skim that, and if there's any words you don't understand, you write down those words, and you just get like a basic scaffolding. You haven't like understood the book yet, but like that's a very different process than starting from page 1 and just trying to go through linearly. It's how a JPEG renders versus a bitmap. I think a bitmap, as it's come, this isn't really an issue anymore because internet's so fast, but I remember in the dial-up era, if an image was a BMP, it would start loading in the upper left and then just like slowly crawl across until, the pixels up there were perfect. It was forming the full image, but like you had no idea what the full image was until it got like halfway down and you were like, oh, okay, this is a picture of a tree or something. Versus a JPEG loads sort of incrementally, where it loads the whole image, but it's very low resolution and very blurry. And then the second pass, it's like a little more clear. And then on the second pass, when the BMP would have loaded like the first 10 lines of pixels, you can sort of tell that the image is like of a tree in a JPEG. So that's a great method of reading a book, and I think that's also something I'd like to keep in mind when doing any sort of arbitrary project. I think if I had started this from like, okay, let me run through the entire process. Let me just like, I'm not going to learn how to do 3D modeling yet. I'm just going to download a ring that's already made, and I'm going to print that, and then I'm going to cast it in bronze, and that's day 1. I'm just going to run through all that, and then okay, this is bad because of these 4 reasons. Like the print didn't turn out well, and then when I did the casting, there were these occlusions. Okay, let's go one layer deeper in all those things, fixing the biggest problem. And if I had gone through the entire process like that, sweeping, I think it would have been less work, and the effort that I put into it would have had higher yield. And then if I want to dive down into like, okay, let me make this perfect mathematical representation of a ring in OpenSCAD, I can, but like that's not an unusual level of detail compared to the other stages of the process. I'm sort of like pushing all of them down at the same time, and then if I choose to improve one of them, it's not way out of whack with my skill in the other areas of the process. And that's something I really want to apply to file inbox and like software work. This is a really good transition. I'm now engaged. Sarah and I are talking about like getting married, building a family, and one of the areas of that is a little spooky to me is like money. I've lived most of my life only having to worry about myself and like having enough money to buy paramotors and things. And now I'm thinking about like, man, it sure would be nice if like Sarah and I had the option available to us of like sending our kids to private school or like buying a nice house in a nice neighborhood with a nice school district. So I have my sights set on like, how do I make a lot more money? And I want to apply this model of making the ring to that problem. And I'm not sure how to do that. I think so. Like right now, I feel like I'm making the same mistake in File Inbox of like, man, all the work I did this last week, and the week before that was all on like, how do I make the perfect transactional email sender? And I feel like that's analogous to how do I define the perfect ring in code with OpenSCAD? Like I'm fixated on a part of the problem that is important and that is technically interesting, but that's sort of out of balance with where the other parts of the project are. So I feel like what I should be doing is running real people through the app as it currently exists, and then they'll be able to highlight for me like, actually, we don't really care about transactional email. Like a plain text thing with just a single link would have been fine. What we really care about is and so you should focus on that instead. That's something further down the pipeline that I wouldn't have seen, but like because I was so fixated on this earlier stage and trying to make the perfect pot instead of just like, okay, let me get as many pots as I can. And I made a mistake. So what I'd like to set my sights on is like, I want File Inbox to be making 20K MRR. And I would love if that happened within 12 months. And I think that's possible because that's like 2.5xing revenue. And everyone I've talked to at MicroConf and like explain the situation, they're like, "Oh yeah, you can do that." And I'm talking to people like Rob Walling who built like multi-million-dollar companies and stuff. So yeah, that's I just want to not make the same mistake as I made with the ring. I want to not like run out of time and not have enough time to do this, and I want to make sure that I'm not over-investing time in this overly technical beginning step. And I would love your help in doing that. How do I don't know. What I want to be able to define this is my time frame and what are the different parts of that, and let me make sure that I'm allocating enough time to each of these stages and trying to do the entire thing instead of just one little piece of it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so yes, you need money to start a family, so it's good to want more money. I can help you in that, like, so we've been doing co-working together, right? And I think, as a sort of, impartial third party, I can tell you, if you want me to, I can help you keep you on track. It's sort of like be careful what you wish for, because yes, I could tell you that writing a bunch of transactional email is a big waste of time, but you like doing it and it is nice and stuff. So I don't know, like I guess think about maybe what you would like me to do, because I'm willing to do whatever you want for me to help you. I can definitely lay out the next steps that you should do that aren't transactional email, and help you do those things if you want. One way you could think about it is if you are actually switching into this mode. So one of the problems I have with this kind of mode is I think forever now, all I'm going to be able to do is maximize revenue, and I won't be able to do anything fun with my app ever again. And I think you'll probably fall into that mindset also. So I think a concrete goal is great because, you want to get to 20K MRR in 12 months. If you get there faster, then you can then switch back to doing all the transactional, beautiful email you want. But that's your goal. And if you decide to shift into that mode, then, really shift into that mode, which means doing what you know is better for MRR and not, whatever you want. I kind of said a lot of things there, but does that make sense? Do you want my help doing that? And do you actually, for real, want to switch into that mode?
I'm reminded of our conversation not 30 minutes ago about your Kaggle competitions. I'm like, do you really want to be focusing on them, or are you having fun doing multiple at once? And I hear that. Yeah, that's I really do enjoy doing this transactional email thing. It's a blast. So what am I really after here? like, and with the Ring project, like, I enjoyed every stage of that. I think I just got a little too fixated on the modeling and the 3D printing part. I just needed to like smooth out where the work was a little bit more, and I think it's going to look similar for File Inbox. Of like, I've had this model since we started this podcast. That like, I just need to do a little bit more development work, and then I can start on marketing.
Yep.
And I think that's my mistake. I think like tomorrow I should do something in marketing. And I've had in my head that, the something I'm doing in marketing is talking to customers. And I kind of have pipelines for that now. And, Rachel helps me schedule more of those interviews. So like I'm kind of doing that badly right now. So maybe that's enough. Maybe like I'm talking to enough customers. So I think the next...
If you want to get to 20K in 12 months, it's not enough. You just said maybe that's enough. It's not enough.
Yeah. Okay. So I need to better improve my process of talking to customers. One of the ways I could do that is having like a button on the website where people can just sign up and call me. That's not something I have right now that I think would make a lot of sense, like on the enterprise plan. And I think, and then that's like talking to potential customers. I need to open up the fire hose of like conversations I'm having with people. I need that to be happening more frequently. Okay.
You also need it. So one thing I know you need to do that you haven't done yet, because it's a mental block for you, is actually getting people onto the new version.
Yes.
Is that possible now? Can people actually use the new version?
Yes, but there's no transactional email yet. Brian used it, and he just like checked the website.
Yep.
Yeah. What's the minimal number?
If you have one person using it, you have one person using it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so people can use it.
Okay.
Yeah. So who can you reach out to who is a warm contact like Brian?
Yeah.
Who you can be like, I know you use my current thing. I would love for you to try my new thing. It doesn't have these 3 things, but you can use it today, and it's better in these 3 ways. Is it better for customers?
Wow, that's a painful question. Is it better for customers? I want to think it's better for customers. Like the interface is better, but like functionally, no. Functionally, not yet, because like the Rails version of File Inbox gets things all the way to your Dropbox, so like you don't even look at the web app. And there's some bugs it has of like if you send a whole bunch of files, sometimes it falls over. That's partially due to scaling problems, but yeah, no, the new version. Well, for people like Brian who need like this very special component of being able to record a video in the web browser, that's something that exists on the new thing that doesn't exist on the old thing. So it's better for him, and it's better for people who need to like record a video in the browser.
Do you know of anyone else who needs to record a video in the browser?
Not offhand, no.
Okay.
I kind of built that feature for him. And with this hunch of like, there's a lot of people I've seen who have like birthday party videos of like having a special event and recording a video in the browser. But like, that's not a good customer. That's not...
That's a one-time, yeah.
That is a one-time thing. Maybe I shouldn't have even built that feature. Harsh realities. Okay. I want to focus on getting people on the new platform.
You know what? I would love for you to talk to any warm customers. Say three warm customers.
Okay.
And by warm, I just mean they'll answer your call or your email or whatever.
Okay.
So you sort of know them, and be like, "Hey, could you try out my new thing?"
Yeah.
And don't even say why it's better. Just say it's going to be the new version. I'm slowly switching people over to it. Could you try it out?
Yeah.
And just see what they come back with. Like, maybe they don't care at all that it doesn't sync to Dropbox. Although that's a pretty big feature. But don't think of that. Just, like maybe they don't care at all that whatever. That's what I would do.
Yeah. Cool. There is a customer that comes to mind who was asking me for a feature of like, can I include metadata on responses in the transactional email? So I'm like a palm away from the transactional email thing that I have been implementing is actually connected to the responses getting sent out. So I think after I connect that, like now the new one is better for him than the old one. and I don't know that he cares that it doesn't sync to Dropbox yet. And I promised him I was going to get that done last week, and then sent him another email that was like, "Oh, hey, that's not going to be done yet." So yes, that's exactly who I'm going to talk to.
Cool.
And then I
So
can run
do
him
that,
through it.
and then if he says, "Oh, it doesn't sync to Dropbox," say, "Okay, I'll make that work for you," and then make it work for him. You know
Yep.
what I mean?
Yep.
It doesn't have to be a perfect generic solution. Like, make it work for him.
Oh, you know what I love about this so much is like the customer is the pot, right? I'm running the customer through the entire pipeline, and then I like ferry them over one at a time until I have an automatic ferry that's going every time. Okay, that's a good thing to focus on. Okay, good. Yeah.
Okay, now a bit, unless you're going to talk more about that, I was going to ask a bit of a meta question.
Yeah, please.
Which is, what I just did was sort of mean and probably didn't feel very good, but I can do that to you if you want.
I think
you want
I
me to
really
do
liked
that for
it.
you?
Yeah. Like it didn't
Okay.
feel good, but I feel good that like I have a clearer path forward of what I'm doing. Yeah. Specifically, the hard question of like, is the new version better for customers? Like,
Yeah.
I really hate that the answer is no.
Sure. All right.
After putting all this work into it, it's much better for me, and it's much better for me to be able to do things that are helping customers. But like, yeah, unless it's something specific like that I have implemented a feature that someone needs, until I get like Dropbox and Google Drive integrations up, no, currently the new version is worse. It does not take files all the way from the web browser to cloud storage. All right. Good.
All right.
Thank you.
I will begin to start pushing you more, unless
Thank you,
you
boss.
be like, no thanks.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll let you know. Thank you.
I also feel super hypocritical doing it, because like I could ask myself the same questions, and I know what questions to ask myself, and I don't
For
want
sure.
to, because I'm like, no.
For
I wanna-
sure. It's so much
I wanna
easier
do
with
my
another
fi-
person than it is for you.
I know.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah.
Cool. I have one more thing I want to touch on, which is my personal life is all over the place, and I hate it. I mentioned this a little bit at the beginning of like, I assembled my desk back together this morning as we were doing Palms, and there was most of this last week was spent in either making the ring or moving out of my old place, which was just a lot of like moving stuff and feeling exhausted at the end of the day, and like I couldn't do anything else, and like all my stuff is in boxes all over. I spent 25 minutes yesterday looking for a shirt because I couldn't find my clothes, and I hate that. And like this morning trying to find my microphone and my desk and getting everything plugged back in, it sucks. That compounded with there was a family emergency last week that ended in Sarah and I hosting my brother-in-law and sister and nephew, adorable nephew, in what is supposed to be my office. So that's going to be until we get back from traveling. So I'm in the master bedroom right now with my little hobo set up for my office. And it's just hard. And I'm reminded of when I was listening to the podcast episode, I think it was 3 or 4, about me getting my wisdom teeth out. And in the moment talking about it on the podcast, I was like, I spent 2 days recovering from it. And then I felt terrible because I wasn't able to be productive on the 3rd day. And listening to it now, I'm like, calm down, dude. Like, you just had take the week off. Like,
Yeah.
it's okay. Like, it's much better in the long term if you like take care of the stuff you need to when you're doing it, and then after that basic stuff is taken care of, get back to doing the longer term work stuff when you can focus, when there is the time and space to be able to do that. So I think that's the advice that I'm wanting to give myself now, of like, I feel kind of bad that I only spent an hour and 32 minutes in the last 7 days working on File Inbox, and like, I'm confident that listening to this episode a month and after from now, I'm going to be like, oh my God, you like moved and made a ring and like got engaged. Like, that's enough. That's fine.
Yeah.
You got anything else done? Amazing. That's all you need to do. And work now on clarifying your life and getting the things in the place where they need to be. And then take a breath, and then you can go and have your full focus be on working on stuff. But like, if you're trying to do all of those things at once, if you're trying to like get a bunch of File Inbox work done at the same time as you're spending 25 minutes looking for everything that you own, that's going to be a recipe for frustration. So like, take a breath, organize your stuff, have enough stuff going that like you're staying on top of email and that sort of thing. But yeah, I don't need to be doing everything all at once.
That is, yeah, good to tell yourself. Good to have that perspective. Also, not to scare you, but it sounds like you want to start a family at some point. The other day, I spent 20 minutes looking for my kids' shoes. So it's going to happen. Like, once you have kids, that sounds like my life.
Yep.
All the time. So there's that also.
I am telling myself a story right now that I'll be able to develop systems where kids' shoes never get lost. I'll have little like AirTag trackers on each one or something. I don't know.
Oh, it works great when they're like, under one. But when they can actually move their shoes to other places, yeah, ours were, yeah, it's, yeah, all your systems go out the window when they can do stuff themselves.
That's hard mode. I'm reminded of like leveling up in a video game of like the game changes. Oh, there was a really good game called Spore. Have you ever played Spore?
I heard of it. It was supposed to be like this big, it reminds me of Avatar. Like it was supposed to be this big, exciting adventure, and then it turned out to be like, eh.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it because I got it when I was really young and hadn't had a lot of experience in playing video games. But the game happens in these really interesting stages. You start off in this like protozoan stage, and it's this game of like you're this cell and you're trying to eat cells that are bigger than you, and you can get these upgrades like flagella, so you can move faster, or chloroplast, so you can get energy from the sun or something. And then as soon as you've done well enough at that game that you can move on into the next stage, the game completely changes. It's no longer this two-dimensional thing where you're swimming around. It's now this game of you are this little land-dwelling animal, and you're trying to and you have like a little community of the animals like you, and you're trying to like eat other bigger animals and like make more babies and grow your population. And then once you've gotten to a certain stage in that game, the game completely changes again, and now it's about like civilizations, and you're trying to like migrate and have little tribes and take over opposing tribes. And then after you've migrated that stage, the game totally changes, and now it's like this space game where you're trying to go out into space and do stuff. So for me, like, I feel like I've done really well at the game of like staying personally organized and like having systems for myself of here's where my things go. And in trying to migrate that game of like how do I do that with a family, the game totally changes. It's like the things that I've done have prepared me to be able to do that, but like it wouldn't make sense to continue playing that game forever in the same way that it wouldn't make sense when you're playing Spore to like continue with the protozoan phase for, you wouldn't want to play that for 6 hours knowing that there's all these other levels of the game to unlock that are very different games that like migrating to those other games, you sort of lose the advantages that you had and the skills that you built up in the earlier stages. But like, there are bigger games to be playing. So I'm excited to start the next level of this game of life.
All right, cool. Well, congratulations and good luck.
Thank you. I guess that's it. I'll see you next week.
All right. Bye.
Cool. Bye.